The issues I want to discuss are very serious ones, and so I guess I should act like it. We live in a times where sometimes that's a little difficult because of the tone that's in our politics. But one of the first things I want to address, I have quite a few notes and illustrations here. I will be going through them to see if I can get the picture of what it is my goal is from my thinking over the last few days. One of the things I want to get right to is the fact that YouTube took down one of my illustration videos, a very short one, saying that it contained a threat to the Beatles. I don't know, when I looked at it, what could have been in it that contained a threat. So I decided not to appeal to them, just to accept their decision. But I think it's indicative of the mentality that Ringo Starr brings to surveillance of my writing, that he would construe a threat where there wasn't one, where there was just public information. I'm very limited in what I am allowed to do and can do. I've been lied about, depicted as dangerous on so many occasions. It's gotten less important to me to make these tapes because I feel that there's enough information now in my blog, storychecksout.org, that somebody could, if they were really interested in following the research, do for themselves what is necessary to evaluate what happened without necessarily needing my talk about it. But as a witness, as long as it's possible for me to give testimony, leave public record, I would like to do that. And for the most part, YouTube has been cooperative in leaving my testimony in my channel without taking it down or subjecting it to ridicule or scrutiny. I don't have too many, malicious scrutiny. I do not have too many people who read it. That's certainly true. I may have some operators who follow it for reasons that are, related to concerns about my reputation for instigating what I don't instigate. I need to get hearing aid batteries. But the storyline about me being an instigator, a malicious person, it's very critical to the British fabrications. The storyline that Ringo is telling, I think it's very important to understand that without any provocation on my part, with no intention of any sort to be malicious to them or to do any kind of harm to them, the Beatles, particularly Ringo Starr and his friends in the Zappa community, set out to make me their enemy. And the things that they've done to make me their enemy are completely irreversible. But they made me their enemy because they wanted a storyline. One part of the storyline that's most well known that I've documented is that they wielded the untold story of John Lennon, saying, while working with museum thieves in Pittsburgh, they said that it was a secret because of piracy. They welded that to the truth about the AIDS attack and kept everything hush-hush on both dimensions while forming militias of the victims to do the will of those who released the attack. So that's common knowledge when it comes to people who've looked over my research. That's the basic issue where I have lobbied law enforcement, for example. I've given up on Seattle, they're lost cause. Very demeaning and treacherous group of people. But if you look at the storyline that Richard operates is one where they both censor me as dangerous for obeying the law, for simply taking my concerns into a public space forum, not to antagonize anybody, just to give information, while simultaneously saying that the reason why they attacked me is because I refused to fight. So in other words, they attacked me for obeying the law. They attacked me for not being threatening. One of the girls in Pittsburgh who I knew, Regina, speaking for the whole provincial culture and the mentality of Ringo Starr, said, well, somebody picked on me when I was a child and I hit them and they respected me forever after. So this is like the challenge of the people who say, I won't fight back against those who gave AIDS to children. I won't fight back against those who released the COVID bomb against our adults. I won't protect the virtue of Jewish women. All of this stuff carps from a central intelligence of Delaware River secret mud, which was that a 12-year-old was hired, overdeveloped 12-year-old was hired to seduce me when I was just turned 13 for the mafia, who was experienced and overdeveloped. And she did it to give a trump to the Delaware River secret mud of the Holy War Department in the Axis revenge system of nativism in Pittsburgh. The Whisper campaign. I mean, as for Jewish chivalry, I mean, Leslie Katz was a virgin. They claimed I was obsessed with her because they are obsessed. That kind of projection is normal with these people. So they attacked me blindside as a child, slaughtering blows, leaving me deaf. They used a nerve agent on me. They tortured me. They lied about me. They lied to my face. They slandered me. And they said this is all justified because it's a duel against this hidden Delaware River secret mud that we've inducted you into, that you're hiding and so forth. And say, so anyway, this is the nativism creepiness that Ringo Starr brings here from Britain and impacts on us, saying we must have therapy. And they bring in, the Pittman Clinic guards, saying we must have therapy. Now, as anybody who notices this atrocious troll, this sucker and loser who's Ringo's protege in the White House in his lame duck period, when desperate, they're real rash. They chew the carpet, they rant, and they tear at things. They must have therapy when they're rash. But they claim to have the patience, and sometimes they seem to have the patience of a rock tumbler. Because I've said quite a bit about these people, it doesn't seem that important sometimes for me to make a tape like this one. But I thought while I had a chance I would. I have a lot of lost manuscripts with notes. About 600 pages had to go out in the garbage, but I think I saw somebody make off with them, so they're probably going over them looking for wisecracks, things they can misconstrue. And you do learn from the way they misrepresent things. They have a golf course mentality about one-liners that they use. They were calling me Custer because of a one-night stand with an Indian woman who they claimed insulted the black man, so therefore the Church of Holy Wars decreed that Midori Goto would go to the Ark Convent of the Green Party. And they had a Sicilian violinist working with her who was promoting the man who attacked me and tortured me as a child. saying I wasn't acceptable because of the peer slanders, the Bernie slanders, network of peers didn't have respect for me and catcalling me through these lines. You know, when I was 302'd for severe trauma, the hospital classified people, the people who guard your confidence, we're in the bars laughing and bragging and telling everybody about it. I mean, that's the level of professionalism that you have at the University of Pittsburgh. And sound mental health, they put some sort of horrible poison in something that they fed me. It got in my lip and infected my gums. And that's very characteristic of this, uh, you know, voodoo culture that they have going in Seattle. That you know, the postmaster watches letters to the Kennedys and kills two of them and says, "Well, that's over now. You have to move on, get on with it." You know, so and they have a poetry control tower from Tulsi Gabbard and stuff. They had this Asian dude who taught at the local Tacoma Community College where Gabbard has some militias, and he was trotting back and forth, quite a with his hands as though tied over his head, loping after loping around campus. You know, like you know, what's with this turkey? Is he afraid somebody's gonna kill off his head or something? What's going on here? You know, and it was of course a run up to the COVID thing that they were pulling, and you know the carpet chewing that has been going on. So you know, when you look at these plans that they pulled off by claiming that they didn't plan them. There are plans, they said, because we didn't plan them. That's the usual Richard logic. And the High Richard in this matter is a cousin of Queen Elizabeth. They had one of the De Jongs on Mount Desert Island. Tammo De Jong was an archetypalist. If you look like somebody, you'll serve as somebody. That's why they kill an innocent white or police kill a black to avenge an innocent white, and so on and so forth, because of this Tammo De Jong eugenics. And they had a Richard, cousin of Queen Elizabeth, Tammo, hot wire agent at both the scene of Reagan supposedly being shot and Lennon supposedly being shot, lookalikes in other words. And these Mysterians who pulled these Houdini tricks from Pentagon Disney gave me a brochure that said there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. Talk about loud. I mean, so there was a story in Seattle. A Jewish man gave it back to a Japanese woman after World War II called He Go. Where did he go, right? Okay, the mountain here disappears sometimes. It's a magic trick. And they used the Ace of Spades in a disappearing act in the song Now You See It by Veronica Lake during the war era as a symbol of King Edward's treacherous idea about, you know, pulling Houdinis for the Fuhrer. The FBI, we now know, was working with the Fuhrers, helping him escape. And they have this idea that you will perform for us. That's what Greg Carl likes to say. You're going to perform for us. JFK was a temporary worker. And Ringo's style comes out here when you look at George Borges, or Borges, the writer from Argentina. Borges had this story about a man who was challenging the union official or whatever, the gang leader. And so they gave in to him, gave him what he wanted, gave him some things that he wanted, let him sleep with the boss's wife, and then they came in, put a gun to his head, and said, "You got what you wanted, you finished," and killed him, right? And that's how they set up JFK. It was very Borges. They did the same thing with this girl. She was gorgeous, and she said she was wanted to marry me, and then they made off with it. So it was like a temporary performance art trick to give the queer bait wanted before they behead the symbol of the new way. Okay, so it's all very Ringo and Borges. And they called me jealous. Well, we now know that was pure trickery. They had implanted a neuroplasm and I was fighting with it, but they are not the same way. For example, one of the roboticists dated this very pretty girl, and like me, when he met a girl who was that pretty, he felt that he could stay with her. So when she left him, unlike me, he was furious forever. You know, held a grudge and stuff. I mean, I don't want to be like that, and I never did. I'm not what they say. In other words, they're liars. But the fact that they're liars doesn't really mean anything, because they were putting on a performance art act to sell their crystal ball award. You know, when it comes to media, I like to say that truth has a gaslighting wall. Truth is out here, and there's a gaslighting wall. And the media stands here, stands guard over the mind. Well, I mean, Cameron Brown was like, oh, this girl is everything that you desire, and he was loping around from the New York Times, setting up the Ripper madness of the New York Times on campus, and you could say that they were setting up homosexual rape war. In other words, they were from Seattle, and they were calling dibs on you know the person who they had tortured for more torture, more brutality through the queer community. And you know, this was Midori Goto, of course, from the Texas Queers. And Cameron Brown was, oh, she is everything you desire, and they were saying, you know, well, you can't have Midori Goto, and all of this stuff. But I just wanted to try to warn my peers that something very terrible was going on. So they pull this stuff, and it's all written into their profile to use Borges and so forth. And they pick on a deaf person. The girl who they raped and attacked was deaf, mentally retarded. I mean, she has epilepsy. I mean, how could they be that sick? You know, when you look at the background information, Greg Carl, who talked about he will perform for us and wrote the stuff about the persona being subjected to successive degradations of the X motive, was friends with Paul Buncher, who set up with the Galata engineering, Galata. They do that all the time. And they had somebody named Greg Starr Cynic, right? Ringo Starr is a cynic, arsenic, you know, in other words, he doesn't care if people catch AIDS. They're still gonna say he's their favorite drummer, you know, and and he was selling my screams as moonshine screams from the Triple X department with John Schulman, the museum thief, and that's what kind of person he is. He's a real lout. So when you look at, you know, the performance art concepts that they promote, you begin to see some of the things that were like going on through the prism of reality. They had something on campus called Radio KKK. And of course, the Black Studies Department thought they were groovy. They were sacred African symbols with their swastikas. And the reason was because they were going to have a barbecue of the white with Bobby Seale, you know, and they were going to make extermination pie for Pittman clinics in Seattle. And NAMI, the National National Mental Ill, has completely discredited them by poisoning people and celebrating the school bomb and so forth. So they have this, you know, cult of bohemians of climate change who haze each other with semen in their coffee at the Red Elm was one of the things that they did. So you have, and that's what they're doing. And there's no protest of these raditillas. None at all. You're supposed to go into the street and protest for them. Because the Bernie Sanders cults of slander from people like Matt Marcus at CMU tell you that the Jewish people think he's a pussy. So, I mean, that's, and they have the tree of life now to point out and say, oh, well, there was a massacre back across the street from his house. These Holocaust issues that he is raising had a backlash. Well, it didn't have anything to do with me. So they go off and kill Susie Kennedy. That's the Tamo de Jong stuff. Nobody, for given everything else that these people pulled, that could have been friendly fire, an effort to confuse, brought on by Her Majesty's government, deliberately confuse things, throw them off the track, make the Jews victims again. Give them a trump card so that they can play, that they are empowered in this voodoo operation. Because that's all it is, it's voodoo stuff. Now, you look at what legitimate law enforcement is, and the situation with Joe Biden. Okay, legitimate law enforcement would have somebody like Serpico investigating. And he was aware of and skeptical of some of the lobby methods that were being used by the Jewish Defense League in New York. Legitimate investigation might be Jim Garrison, who looked into the Kennedy assassination. Well, we know from the script that the Holocaust community wrote, that Gail Burston wrote, that Richard Starsky's, Greg Starstenik's little Nikola, partner of John Schulman and Yoko Ono, were people who I had a overload of material there for a minute. You see, it is an overload situation. I mean, if you look at Greg Starsinek and Gail Burston, you see that the school book was engineered by people who claimed they didn't write it and were therefore its rightful owners, with the people who they claim did write it. And the only person who they want removed from the situation is an innocent person who they used. And it's a Hollywood Truman show. And what I was trying to explain was in legitimate law enforcement, when you look at Serpico, he was also a Hollywood Truman show. If you look at the script, Dee Dee is the central character in the script. She's the Delaware River Mud. So Dee Dee Allen, which is like Woody Allen, everything you wanted to know about sex but were afraid to tell people had happened to you, was the first name that you see in the film Serpico. In other words, the people who shot him then exploited him. And Oliver Stone did the same thing when the time was ripe to Jim Garrison. So this comes down to, the Army's rigmarole through the Catholic workers like Martin Sheen, who preside over the bridge of celebrity for John Lewis and so forth. I mean, it's all very cynical. Is that they have a stacks and stacks and stacks of applications for sainthood. And if you want to be accepted to the Catholic worker sainthood, you accept anonymity and poison in the mouth. Because Sean Strub took AIDS after all. And so they don't care about protecting people. What they care about is getting even for the victims who already were affected. The whole principle was the burning barn principle. Now, if you look at that dude from robotics who became very jealous, he was an authentic grudge holder. He fell in with Kate McFerrin, who lived by the barns where the horses were all burned, and she loved to ride horses. And she loved to talk about old letters she loved to write. And she was a friend with someone named Marsden. Dan Bed of Thieves, Den of Thieves is a very important symbol in the Holy War structure of the operation. Ben's last words were church. And you see in the script Nabucco's stupid code about what boys should do and girls should do. Okay, Nabucco was the star of Children of Hiroshima. Okay, so Nabucco's stupid code about what boys should do. Morpheus was a character who's a little bit like Wilson. Black people measured Wilson in the Crisis magazine because of his belief in the League of Nations maybe weighed in his favor. And the idea of having equity in society may weigh in the favor of a holy war who winked at these awful justifications for atrocity like AIDS and COVID. And you could see they used the symbol of the spider to remind people of what Leroy Blevins had discovered in Dealey Plaza and reflected on the lens as a symbol of their intent to kill Searcy and then kill two more Kennedys. And one of them, the Asian dude who was loping back and forth, talked in class, what would you be driven to eat, spiders? When they poison me in the mouth as a symbol of their poison crime because, where's the beef? Suppose there's not enough food to feed a sparrow in those Asian communities. So, but Kay McFerrin is who this robotics dude who was very jealous took up with. And across town from her was Allison Goldman. And one over by Linden Street where the Abdul the terrorist, the schoolgirl Jewish kid out of Eisenstadt lived. And between Bartlett Street and Linden Street is the Tree of Life. Okay, so from Kate McFerrin to Allison Goldman is part of the network of, Stuart Onan lives down there. Onan is like Ono and Ian McDonald. Onan has watched all of these things. He was the naval supervisor over the queer bait for years and years, helping military structure this plant in the city of Pittsburgh, which he calls the Walled City. And Goldman was the name of a book that, for cost-effective one-line security measures, Yoko Ono saying there was something weird about that book, paid immortal dividends. She's working with Gail Burston, and Albert Goldman was working with Gail Burston. Has Ian and the Zodiacs and I am the Walrus right on top of each other. Ian is named in those letters. She says there's something weird about that. In other words, those are mine because it's so weird, and she is so weird that those are mine, right? So, okay. They worked together all along. Shiona was in the Klan around Highland Park where these letters emerged. Shiona, Vengeance of Shiona. Onan, Shiono, Sheen, Ono. Sheen was one of the people who came in and swooped down over these and helped the pedos in the Catholic work pull it off. Iranian, Mancinian, these people who are poisoning people in the boat, in Seattle, because they just see someone like me as a moral discard, white, and that's the way they think. So they're afraid of words. Ringo Starr is absolutely terrified of words in the way that Winston Churchill was. He doesn't want to hear words. And one of the things that comes out about these madmen is that the father of this roboticist with McFerrin, the two of them were very close friends with the Indian community. And McFerrin was in social anthropology, who set up the alpinist scam, where the Indian woman was the honorary, the black man, who in the name of the sacred African symbol, the swastika, called dibs on the Dory goat. So, you get the whole story of the theme park in Mount Desert Island, which was really the second Holocaust simulation experiment that these madmen ran. First was gassing me in Kansas State, and then they used me for an aid sacrificial symbol for these monsters. So what you have in this situation is, partly a hunger theory. Derek Parfit came to Pitt, and he was the one who came up with this idea of the repugnant solution. There's not enough. All you'll do is make everybody poor if you take from the rich and give to the poor. Now, for me, when I earn enough money to buy a bicycle, it makes me feel better. Or when money is rightfully mine to buy the bicycle, it makes me feel better that if somebody steals a bike or gets a bike in surplus and gives it to me as an act of generosity. Because what they're really doing is setting it up so that I have to be a puppet of a party that's pulling these things. Whereas in the other situation, I can ride off and change my location if I want to, for example, if things get too bad in a sicko joint like Seattle. So, but the Bohemians of climate change won't accept any blame for anything that happened. Ringo Starr never accepts any blame for anything that happened. When I was a child, I have a lot of problems with the way I was treated as a child. Chuck Watts and Ralph Marslock, and get that name, Marslock, fighting Margot Mars over the lack of virginity was the Delaware River secret mud issue. So who done it? I don't know who. They killed my father and stuff. So the don't know who scripture, the O'Hara Street Scarlet Secret, of neurobehavioral research. It's complicated. I get forgetful sometimes in the train of reasoning that go into all of these occupational issues. But Greg Carl had said that the initial counter of the X motive is tainted by the shadow of the adversary. Dee Dee's mud secret was she was not a virgin, right? When she seduced the queer bait, So, now I don't know who. It was Nicholas, but we don't know who. So, but what you see in the covenant of these people is this David Douglas's father. He said, if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. Now, you do see black people turning on me. There's no question that Aaron Dixon and Pittman Clinics poisoned me. And and they're rampaging, chewing the carpet over the white. The white. He thinks he's going to have $400,000 a year of untouchable by tax equality with Kamala Harris. So it's just really ridiculous. I've never lived above the poverty line. And they start poisoning me in the mouth and stuff, saying that's the cerebral equity of their psychology and stuff. It's really deranged. But they're working with this racist roboticist from Rochester, right? And they're black men. He gets them to turn on the white. The white. It's the Tamo DeJong stuff. Instead of looking squarely at Pink Floyd, he's pulling this stuff. So you have this situation with, the food fight, poison criminals of Seattle, the Bernie Slanders and stuff, who work with, the South African Secret Service, basically. Dennis Brutus, University of Pittsburgh, promoting the idea that the swastika is a sacred African symbol. Zooming down with Tulsi Gabbard's militia from Tacoma, in a depopulation exercise, right? And they call it a food fight and start poisoning people with the food, and they're the good guys. That's what you're supposed to remember. That's really funny. So, what's the American way? Do we really have a right to be our own little arc of concentration camps surrounded by walls while the world suffers? Well, the world isn't entirely suffering. Some of these people are very rich people from Africa pulling this stuff, manipulating America's dreams of idealism and equity without actually doing the hard work of respecting American principles. They say that citizenship is a privilege, and they scorn that. They use our schools to promote their hatred. They're supposed to celebrate the defeat of the enemy when they close our community colleges. That's pretty strange, right? and they have this dude Chaguna Kabugi, and they scribble, I don't know who, on my father's deathbed, who was in public education. Well, the point is that when Penis Gabriel, for the Richard, the Queen's cousin, uploaded the ISIS warrior, Yusu Endur, for the Pussy Ball tourney of Obama and Biden, you have the theme of if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. The celebrity superstate generated a yammer from the African superstate, the super rich, the African Secret Service. The Senegal warrior comes and he says, if you want equity, you will do it the British Green Party way, right? And that's very Euro stuff. I mean, America's lower class, middle class, our schools, our public schools, our hope for our children, our hope for a decent wage, our legitimate bohemia are smashed. And they pregnancy shame and then complain about abortion, you know. And they make up these obsessive, crazy stories about fighting over virginity, raping girls who have epilepsy, and then saying that they're chivalrous for the homeless and stuff. I mean, Wes Browning is off his rocker. Something's wrong with people like Real Change Magazine. But that's a theme in all this. A very icky funeral. I mean, Vicky Funari promoted. She was in on this with Gail Burstyn and Schulman, which was strong. You know, they really do have a bohemia in Carnegie Mellon who really exotic partiers. I mean, that's an energy field that comes out of the, the warehouse scene in Pittsburgh. That's really very high energy. Now, what I was saying about Marslack and when I was a child, Chuck Watts, you know, Marslack, Weasel ripped my flesh. He was really friendly with Zappa. He introduced me to the Zappas. And he's the one who helped set up the interview with Penis Gabriel that Penis used as an excuse to lie to me and torture me and rape my girlfriend and so forth, kill the Kennedys and all the other things these assholes had done. Was that, Marslack and Chuck Watts, this gang, took me to Kansas, and we ended up in the bedroom of the drummer for Kansas, right? And he's in there giving hash to this really traumatized 14-year-old. And then he goes out in the hallway and starts throwing around like the trays there and in the hallway. I mean, I would vomit bag stuff. But what's funny about it to me is he comes in and he says, oh, it made me feel like I was the Beatles in Help. And I actually believe that. I actually believe that that's pretty much the what passes for fun with somebody like Ringo Starr. I mean, all this voodoo and extermination pie is fun for these people who... And Louis Lapham talks about these people in New York who have tears for sale. Right. Okay. There's something to be said for concern for refugees, for children in Yemen. It's wrong to batter children. You know, that's Save the Children is a very legitimate group of people, but you don't save the children by poisoning poets and using the poets for the rise of a victim underworld who are doing the bidding of the people who made them victims. You know, they put over the door, the room of victimhood is occupied, you know, and they say that it's a duel, a full fight duel. What's the duel? The reason it's a duel, you will never have rights because of the Delaware River mud trump of this 12-year-old girl, Dee Dee, who seduced you for the Hollywood back alleys of the extermination program. Kids and Gummo were the production team behind the stuff with Warhol and Ono and so forth. And she's the Taliban majesty of these victims. I can read your mind. I know what you need. You need to kill again, you know. And this is her. And when someone cries for you, Loki, that's the story. Loki gets imprisoned in a tree, and when someone cries for you, you will be free. So, Marslack and Weasel Rip My Flesh is all of this mentality. You know, they think that Disneyland After Dark, America is like Disneyland After Dark. we put on this brave face, Biden, the good angels. But after dark, everybody wants to know what's going on. Everybody wants peep. They go into the victim chambers and set up cameras to photograph the victim getting therapy and stuff. And this is how WQED operated. And they made a spectator show out of their extermination pie. So I think it's important to understand what's really going on with these people who are sick and crazy. And look at the telltale clips that show that the witch doctors of Warhol were not a found art program. They were a plan all along. They were a plan of using shock therapy as a control tower, poetry control tower, to bribe the conscience of people who they've provided therapy through false storylines from the Britain, who are after a basic modem through hotwire services of power over pernicious nobodies like the Kennedys as they see them. Because that's the way the royal family see us. They see everybody in America as pernicious nobodies, and they just want the modem. They know how to pluck the strings and play the buttons and so forth. I mean, it's gone pretty bad with this stuff. I realize that there's questions about whether we should have accepted Jewish refugees who made it to our shores during World War II. I entirely agree that we should have. There's questions about not letting black soldiers at the Triumphal Arch after we defeated Adolf Hitler, at least for a time. But I don't think the question is one that's so great that we need to go around calling Adolf Hitler a sacred African warrior and being lewd about the undressing of children and trauma and tears of horror at being slaved through slaughtering blows because they're white. Oh, I just don't see it that way. I think that we can do better, that we have public schools, and that we need to get these creeps, identified so that they can't pull these kinds of stunts. But it's important to understand that when you turn to Amnesty International, you're turning to assassins who torture and rape people. It's a scam. When you turn to sound mental health, you're talking about people who invent threats when threats are not being made, who poison people who are innocent of wrongdoing, poison them. They poisoned me in the mouth. They've done a lot of other terrible things. They've really affected my health and my prospects for any kind of longevity. And while it doesn't make me desperate to make these tapes, it does make it reasonable for me to make these tapes, because the kind of blacklisting that they've engaged in, the kind of chop horrors that Tulsi Gabbard's militia have been pulling, are really sinister. And I really think they should be stopped.